Welcome viewers. Today we learn the Braille reading and writing process. Braille is a primary tactile means for people who are blind or visually impaired. People think that being blind is a terrible disability, but knowing how to write and read Braille is essential for communication and education. The Braille alphabet was invented by Louis Braille, a French teacher of the blind. It consists of patterns of raised dots arranged in cells of up to 6 dots in a 3 by 2 configuration. Each cell's dot arrangement represents a Braille letter, numerical or punctuation mark. Many frequently used words and letter combos also have their own single cell pattern contractions. Students will need special instruction to learn to read and write Braille code. Usually, students are introduced first to the alphabet and uncontracted Braille. Uncontracted Braille translate each print character into a Braille character or Braille cell. Once they are proficient in recognizing and producing letters, they move on to contracted Braille. Contracted Braille consists of shorthand in Braille. There are 3 Braille code versions. The first Braille code version is Grade 1. Grade 1 Braille consists of 26 standard letters of alphabet and punctuation. It is mainly used by people who just started reading Braille. Next is the Grade 2 Braille. It consists of the 26 standard letters of the alphabet, punctuation and contractions. The contractions are employed to save time, space because a Braille page cannot fit as much text as a standard printed page. Books, signs in public places, menus and most other Braille materials are written in Grade 2 Braille. The abbreviated contractions also make reading and writing Braille much faster. The other version is Grade 3 Braille. This is used only in personal letters, diaries and notes. It is a kind of shorthand with the entire words shortened to a few letters. Codes have also been established for music Braille. Codes are used for mathematical notation, which is called Nemeth Braille. Nemeth code was developed by Abraham Nemeth and so is named after him. Coming to persons who will need Braille, we categorize them into 3. They are the beginning reader who is blind, the reader who will use both Braille and print, the reader who has learned to read using print who now needs to read using Braille. The beginning Braille reader, like all beginning readers, must acquire the readiness skills associated with the actual reading process. An important prerequisite that all readers must have to be efficient and read with comprehension is a rich background of concrete experiences involving many objects, people, places, activities and cause and effect relationship. In addition, the child must have receptive and expressive vocabulary that corresponds to his experiences. Each individual child must develop auditory skills of identification, auditory closure, sequence, auditory memory and auditory discrimination. The young reader must be able to concentrate, exert self-control and follow directions. Another important readiness factor is motivation. Once the student has experiences and language sufficient to read, he can begin a more structured reading program. There are many effective teaching programs used to provide reading instruction. Each child will have his or her own unique set of experiences. The teacher will find that the number and quality of concrete experiences will vary from child to child. One should never assume that basic information is correctly understood until the child can demonstrate that he or she does understand. While both sighted and blind children require language concepts, it is more time consuming to provide the experience required to teach the concept to blind children. It is important to provide experiences in a natural environment. The children that have already learned to read print have mastered the reading process skills, but when they need to use print, they must develop the skills associated with the reading using their fingers. All students learning to use Braille must acquire certain skills. The number one skill is tactual discrimination. Tactual discrimination is the ability to discriminate discrete tactual differences. It is essential to efficient Braille reading. The noticeable shape or arrangement of dots is the most critical variable in Braille reading. The Braille trainer should not teach the child by teaching the dots numbers. This may be helpful to the person who reads Braille with eyes, but not for the tactile reader. Also, the teacher should avoid teaching the idea that some letters are reversible pairs, for example, R and W. The other required skill is finger dexterity. The effective Braille reader will have curious fingers that move quickly with ease. Many readers use all four fingers of each hand. This speeds up the reading process by allowing the reader a view of a series of symbols rather than a single cell. The next important skill is hand and finger movement. Most good Braille readers use two hands to read Braille, reading the center line with both hands together, retracing line with the left hand, and drops left hand to next line. Use left point finger as a line marker while the right hand refers to meet the left. The beginner keeps both hands together with the index fingers touching the line. As the reader gains experience, he often uses his hands more independently. While he is completing one line with his right hand, the left moves in a diagonal pattern to the beginning of the next line to read the first part of the succeeding line. This picture shows the finger movement. A skilled two-handed reader begins reading a line of Braille by placing both hands at the beginning of a line. At approximately the middle of the line, the right hand continues to read to the end of the line, while the left hand moves in the opposite direction to locate the beginning of the next line. The right hand finishes the reading the first line, the left hand then reads the first words on the next line, and the right hand quickly joins the left hand on the second line. This finger move across the characters in a smooth left to right sweep across the page. Both hands share in the touch reading process. Very light pressure should be maintained at all times. Light finger touch is another skill required for Braille reading. Beginning readers may have a heavy touch, but to be good two-hand readers, one must acquire a light touch. Games may be created to help students develop a light touch. An example of an activity to encourage a light touch is to ask students to slide their fingers across a piece of paper without moving the paper. This takes practice and attention to task. In addition, the student's hand should move smoothly from left to right without stopping. Then the page turning skill. The student should be instructed to turn the page quickly when the left hand cannot find another line. Position. The surface of the reading material should be flat at elbow level. The reader should maintain an erect, comfortable reading position. Both hands are used in a coordinated way in touch reading and should rest together on the reading surface. All fingers should be gently curved so that the pads rest on the line of Braille. The hand should be nearly parallel. Wrist should be relaxed. The surface employed for the perception of Braille is an oval area on the pads of the fingers. Most readers utilize two index fingers, with some adding the two middle fingers. Students will perform better if their hands are clean, dry and warm. Furniture should fit their bodies, allowing the arms from the wrist to elbows to be even or a bit higher than the desktop. Feet should be flat on the floor and the back straight. One should remember, students with severe visual impairments will not be literate without Braille. Once these skills are required, speed reading will happen. Most Braille readers would love to increase the reading speed. We know of those who have mastered the techniques well enough to achieve Braille reading speeds of several hundred words a minute. Although it would be nice, it is not necessary for everyone to read Braille at lightning speed in order to use it productively. The minimum reading speed should be 25 to 30 words per minute to get to comprehension. However, for those who need to get a lot of information quickly, any increase in reading speed can be very beneficial. Several speed increasing techniques and related exercises are followed among Braille leaders. They have proved effective for those who already know Braille and want to increase their reading speed and comprehension. Let us discuss the techniques. Technique 1. Some readers have tactile sensitivity in different fingers. There are some methods that are pretty standard in how we teach children to use both hands and to use all the fingers to do different kinds of jobs. Some students will have sensitivity and have more sensitivity in one finger than in other fingers, and so they may use different fingers than other children do. Some children will use one hand to anticipate the next line and go there before they finish the end of the line. Some children will not do that. Some children are going to develop their own reading styles in Braille, just like sighted children who read print are going to develop their own reading styles. The technique 2 is automation. Children must make the hand movement across the page automatic. If the children do not focus on the way their hands are moving, they can concentrate better on the text. They can make movement of their hands across the page as fluid as possible. It is not necessary to understand the symbols while touching. The goal is to execute your movements as unconsciously as possible. The technique 3 is Braille reading activity. Braille learners can make Braille a part of everyday activities. The axiom use it or lose it applies to acquire Braille reading skill. The learners must make opportunities for reading Braille by using Braille labels, taking Braille notes, or reading a Braille magazine. Increasing Braille reading speed is a challenging goal for many people. The most important ingredient to any successful Braille reading activity is reading assessment. The teacher can observe development of a certain concept and skills and prerequisites for reading Braille. The students need to acquire concepts such as start, stop, begin, end, go, stop, first, last, side, corner, center, middle, and then they need to acquire skills in following a raised line with one or more fingers, following the line from left to right, finding the next line, turning pages in a book one at a time and locating the position of the page number. The teachers should ensure the visually impaired students adapt certain procedures while reading Braille. Good reading postures like feet on the floor, book at a good level, book at 90 degree, using two hands to read the Braille and monitoring consistent forward hand movement when reading, no scrubbing or unnecessary aggressive hand or finger movements. Coming to Braille writing, writing in Braille requires a bit of effort. However, Braille learners can write Braille both by hand and with a keyboard. Once the visually impaired persons learn the Braille alphabet, both techniques should be fairly used, but it requires practice. The first prerequisite for Braille reading writing is learning the alphabet. All the Braille is written as a combination of 6 dots per cell. The dots are arranged as 2 vertical rows of 3 dots or 3 horizontal rows of 2 dots. A single letter can be represented by as few as 1 or as many as 5 dots. There is a pattern to the Braille alphabet which corresponds to the letters order in the alphabet. The first 10 letters of the alphabet A to J are composed exclusively of some combination of the top 4 dots. The next 10 letters K to T are composed by adding the bottom left hand dot to the previous 10 letters. Thus, when the top left hand dot, which is generally A, is accompanied by the bottom left hand dot, it becomes K. Next comes L, which is made by adding the same dot to the formation that means B. This pattern continues up to T. The next 5 letters excluding W are formed by adding both of the bottom 2 dots to the original 10 letters. W is anomalous because the letter did not exist in French, the language for which Braille was originally designed. The next prerequisite is learning punctuation. Punctuation is similarly composed of a combination of these 6 dots in a single cell. A cell consisting exclusively of a single dot on the bottom right indicates that the letter that follows is capitalized. A period is composed of the bottom right hand dot and the 2 dots in the second row. This is the same as the letter D, only moved down 1 row. Similarly, an exclamation point is formed by moving the letter F down 1 row. To indicate that the whole word is capitalized, not just the first letter, the word will be preceded by 2 capitalization symbols. That means 2 cells of just the bottom right hand dot. To write a number, use the number symbol. This is the 3 dots of the right column along with the bottom dot of the left column, making a shape like the backward L in English. The number symbol can be followed with the symbols generally denoting A through J, and A following the number symbol becomes numeral 1 and a B becomes a 2 all the way up to J, which represents 0. Learning contractions is another prerequisite. Because Braille print takes up so much more space than the English alphabet, writing is shorthanded by the use of contractions. There are 189 additional combinations in which common words like for, and, or, the are shorthanded into a single cell. Similarly, common components in words including endings like ing and ed have their own symbols. It is also standard to use abbreviations. For examples, the letters TM are shorthanded for tomorrow. For Braille writing, one should collect the tools. To write Braille by hand, the learners need a slate, stylus and cardstock paper. The stylus is a small device, usually 2 inches long. One side is a handle, the other is dull shaft of metal. The metal is pressed into the paper to create the protruding dots that comprise the Braille alphabet. A slate consists of 2 metal plates hinged together to permit a sheet of paper to be inserted between them. Some slates have a wooden base or guide onto which the paper is clamped. The upper of the 2 metal plates, the guide plate, has cell-sized windows. Under each of these, in the lower plate, are 6 slight pits in the Braille dot pattern. To use a slate and stylus, the user places a sheet of paper over the lower strip and closes the upper strip and presses it into the place. A stylus is used to press the paper against the pits to form the raised dots. A person using Braille writes from right to left. When the sheet is turned over, the dots face upward and are read from left to right. Cardstock paper is a thick type paper. When a stylus is applied to it, it will bend into an indentation rather than rib. Braille is also produced by special machines with 6 keys, one for each dot in the Braille cell. The first Braille writing machine, the Hall Braille Writer, was invented in 1892 by Frank H. Hall of the Illinois School for the Blind. A Perkins Braille writer is a device much like a standard typewriter, except for it has only 6 keys. The large key in the center of the Braille writer is the space bar. 3 keys to each side of the space bar represent the 6 dots alignments in Braille. To type a cell, we need to hold down the keys for all the necessary dots at the same time. The slightly raised keys to the far left is the line down key, and the key parallel to it on the far right is the backspace key. There will also be a large curved piece of plastic on the top of the machine that serves as a cartridge, written as well as grey knobs on the side that are used to roll the paper into the machine. In Braille, the dots are sometimes signified with numbers. Where the upper left hand dot is 1, The middle left dot is 2 and the bottom left hand dot is 3. The right column similarly descends from 4 to 6. If we represent the dots this way, the Braille writer keyboard is arranged 3, 2, 1 space and 4, 5, 6. Typewriters of course are fairly cumbersome by modern standards. Luckily, there are now electric Braille writers that work on similar principles. Device like the Perkins Smart Brailler enables to store documents electronically. They also have audio support and training exercises. Recent Macintosh computers give access to program a keyboard or even touchscreen of the iPad to serve as a Braille typewriter. In this case, keys on a typical QWERTY keyboard can be reprogrammed to have the same functions they would do on Brailler. There are Braille printers that can be hooked up to a computer and they print Braille. Thus, to conclude, the expectations for students to learn to read and write are no different for a sighted or blind person. It is fundamental to learn these skills in order to progress. Several studies show that Braille literacy is directly correlated with academic achievement and employment among the visually impaired students. Thank you.